Hello, everyone. We're giving the audience a few moments to enter from the waiting room. And I think we can move to the next slide. This is Sabrina Paganoni. I'm here from the MGH and AMG Healy Center for ALS. And I'm here with the patient navigation team, Catherine and Alison tonight, and our administrative assistant, Jessie. And Catherine kindly noticed that today it's a leap year. It's a leap day in a leap year. And so for today, we thought we would take a moment to think about the progress that we've made since the last leap year, which leap day and leap year, which was February 29th, 2020. If we can go to the next slide. You know, February 29th, 2020, actually, I remember that time very well because we were about to start the platform trial. We were getting ready for the launch, and our investigator meeting was actually scheduled for March 12th, 2020. At the time, as you may know, I'm from Italy. COVID had already started in Italy, and then there was some uncertainty about what would happen in the US, and so I still remember that time very well. And we ended up moving the investigator meeting from in person. We had over 200 people scheduled to fly over to Boston to launch the meeting, and then we turned that into our very first virtual meeting ever. And so, if I think about that, 4 years have passed. What's amazing is that, the pandemic did not stop ALS research. Certainly, we have continued to work with so many of you, and most importantly, the progress that we have seen over the last 4 years in ALS research in general would have not been possible without the partnership from this patient community. So thank you, Catherine, for reminding us of this special milestone. And yes, it's good to reflect on the things that were available then and are available now. So if we can go to the next slide, since the last LEAP day, more medications have been approved for ALS. At the time, there were fewer options, and then in 2022, we had a couple of approvals, oral Radicava and Relivrio, and then in 2023, tofersen for the treatment of SOD1-associated ALS. And so I think that now we have 4 approved drugs in the US. Certainly that was not the case in 2020. And now that we have more medications and continued progress on supportive care, I think that early diagnosis and access to care continue to become even more important. We want to give people options, and we want to do that as soon as possible after the first symptoms. So we are, aside from the trial, we're also doing a lot of work in terms of clinical research to facilitate early diagnosis. We're also doing, with many colleagues and many other members of the ALS community, advocacy, and we're talking to many stakeholders to try to improve access to care and facilitate the important work that multidisciplinary care teams do in partnership with the ALS patient community. So I think that, really we have seen some progress, certainly not enough, not enough for us to slow down in any way. And with that, we need to continue to increase research options. But I think it's good to reflect on the fact that there's been some progress over the last 4 years, and now we need to continue to do better. Next slide. So that these 4 drugs that I discussed can be given as a cocktail. And so I think that, right now, many clinics are doing that because we want to give our patients all the best options, all the best opportunities as soon as possible after the first symptoms and after diagnosis. And then the goal right now is to try to slow down ALS as much as possible. Hopefully, we'll get more drugs on the market to completely stop it. Some of the drugs may be targeted, like tofersen, which is targeted to a specific genetic mutation. And for those who are carrying specific genetic mutations, we now have exciting trials trying to prevent ALS altogether, trying to give the drug even before the disease is sort of apparent clinically. And that would be an important goal. As you may be aware that tofersen is now being trialed for people who are genetic carriers of the SOD1 mutation. And so hopefully, obviously, it will take a few years to see the results, but hopefully we will be able to prevent ALS in that group. And that could be a great proof of principle. And hopefully we can do that also in other genetic mutations and ultimately in all forms of ALS. And many of our colleagues are also working on ways to restore function by using either assistive technology or doing research on tissue regeneration or nerve regeneration. And those are other very important goals. If you can click one more time. I am optimistic, actually, because we have over 200 companies in the ALS space. In addition, we have active clinical trial networks, obviously very engaged patient population, and a lot of collaborative foundations. So I think that together we can definitely continue to work on these and continue to achieve new milestones. Next slide. Now, so far, we are targeting some of the multiple mechanisms that are implicated in ALS. The cartoon is a schematic of a nerve cell or a motor neuron. And you can see that there are many boxes inside the motor neuron. And that's because there are many things that can go wrong in a motor neuron that can either cause or worsen ALS. And the boxes may be different from person to person. So obviously, if somebody has an SOD1 mutation, that would be a more important box than for other people who don't have that genetic mutation. But right now, we think that many boxes may contribute to ALS in any given individual. And so the drugs that are approved are targeting one of the mechanisms that are circled in red or pointed to by the arrow. And so these treatments, the drugs that are approved right now are potentially being given as a cocktail because they target different mechanisms and were safely combined in previous trials. And so hopefully we can continue to build on that by targeting other parts of the motor neurons with new drugs that we're testing in the platform trial or are being tested in other trials for ALS. Next slide. So the platform trial, again, started exactly 4 years ago. And since then we have continued to expand and grow our house, which is a common protocol, a sort of a house that can host many regimens. Each regimen is a drug. Or to be specific, it's an active study drug with matching placebo. We continue to add 1 or 2 every year. At this time, we are up to 7 drugs, 7 regimens. We are enrolling at over 70 participating sites. We have enrolled over 1,000 participants. We still use the same protocol. So it's one protocol, one sort of set of instructions and one single central ethics board and central governance so that we can continue to continue to build on what we have learned so far and continue to add drugs and continue to refine our processes. Next slide. Before I move on, I want to mention that we are still enrolling for regimens F and G, and I want to provide some updates today as well on that. Next slide. So one thing that I want to go back to the cartoon and see where we are going with this. If you can keep clicking a few times, Jesse, you'll see that as we added different regimens, we continue to test and trial drugs that are targeting different mechanisms. And this is important. As I said before, the drugs that have been approved so far target a variety of mechanisms. We have to continue to sort of test them one by one. And that's what we've been doing with the regimen. And every time, actually, we add on top of standard of care. So all of this is on the background of people that can also have access to all the medications that are approved. But then on top of that, we test a new mechanism. We test a new drug, which also means we test a new mechanism. We test a new target in the motor neurons to try to see if they work or not. And obviously, if they work, that's obviously great news. If they don't work, it's disappointing. But it's also important to note that that means that perhaps that particular box was not as important as we initially thought it might be. And so it's important to get positive answers. It's also important to get negative answers as long as they're all done in a collaborative way with very high quality data so that we can move on to the next one and really think about what's most important. What are the most important drivers of ALS? And so, we will continue to test different drugs and different mechanisms. The 2 drugs that we're testing right now, regimens F and G, actually Both target the box that's circled in black, called the Integrated Stress Response, or ISR. We do have several webinars that we have been recording. We gave live, and also they're recorded on our website in case you missed them, with lots of great information about what the ISR, or Integrated Stress Response, is, and what is it, why that particular mechanism that regimens F and G are targeting right now. Why is it that we are particularly excited to be testing it to see if this particular mechanism is important in ALS? Next slide. I do want to mention something that's important that we want to continue to share with you, that the platform trial is also a unique opportunity to advance science and do so in a collaborative way. So for every participant is contributing to the testing of a specific drug, but not only that, each participant is also contributing to a lot of biomarker research, genetic research, research on digital outcomes. I'm listing some of them on the slide. Additional ones are included in the ongoing regimens, or will be included in planned regimens. We're also working to add 3 regimens over the next few months. And so the idea here is to continue to do research and test drugs, but also share the biosamples and the data from the shared placebo with everyone. So this trial, for those of you who may be new, has as people participate, they can participate as active treatment participants, or as part of a shared placebo group that continues to grow over time, and that actually helps us gain knowledge across regimens. So sort of aside from the specific drug that's being tested. And so this allows us to contribute to the growing knowledge on ALS. And so actually we will talk about the importance of the platform trial approach also as a way to advance science in some upcoming webinars, and we'll be sure to distribute the news about that. I know I will be speaking at one of the International Alliance webinars, and I think that's an important point. We should make sure to provide a link, especially over the next few weeks as we get closer to that webinar. Platform trials are different from standalone trials because they don't only test drugs, but they can also help the community in a collaborative way. So we'll be sure to talk about that in one of the upcoming webinars, and also definitely that will be a topic of one of the International Alliance webinars. Next slide. So far, in terms of our platform trial, in terms of the currently enrolling regimens, we're enrolling for regimens F and G. We're making great progress. In fact, we are closely monitoring enrollments. We hope to complete enrollment very soon. We still have a few spots available. I do want to mention that if you're interested in participating, please contact your physician and care center immediately, because we are really making good progress on enrollment. So if you're interested in participating, I think this is the time before we close enrollment for regimens F and G. Next slide. And the sites that are enrolling are part of a network of sites that belong to the NILS consortium. We're really excited to be able to offer this opportunity across the country. So the information is on the slide if you want to learn more about the center near you. Next slide. We continue to share our experience with others. So I mentioned we're going to have a few webinars coming up, but also if you're interested to learn more, please see our website. The links brings you to the master protocol, our publications, our documents. And next slide, we are committed to publishing all our papers open science. So if you click one more time, you'll see the link to our open access articles that have been published to the first two papers. And so these are, again, available for everyone to read. You can follow the link or the QR code. They describe the design and the statistics that make the platform trial possible. I will say that we're also working on other publications. The publication process always takes a little bit of time, longer than we all want. But certainly one of my goals is that this year we're going to have a number of other papers available, several of them from the platform trial, again, available for everyone to read. Next slide. And we want to continue to work with you and get your questions and provide you with information on a weekly basis So we'll see you certainly next week. And then the following week, as many of you may know, we devote the second webinar of every month, so the second Thursday of every month, to expanded access. And we're very excited that Dr. Andrews from Columbia University will join us to talk about the clean expanded access specifically, and that's scheduled for March 14th. Thank you. So, and with that, I think I'm gonna start taking your questions, and I see. Thank you for your comments, and also for nice comments from some of you saying that you've been following us for a few years. So thank you for that. I wanted to start with the first few questions. Are there any clinical trials for C9 at MGH? Actually, there's a few companies that have run C9 clinical trials recently. Right now, as of this moment, I'm not aware of anyone that's enrolling for C9. I know that there's interest in setting up more of these trials, but definitely, we'll keep you posted on that. There's a good question about the Diana protocol. The Diana protocol is a sort of a it's a mix of nutritional supplements. It does not impact eligibility for the platform trial. So, to specifically address your question, the Diana protocol is not exclusionary for the trial. So there is a shout out to our dear colleague, Dr. Locatelli, and his Everything ALS webinar. So thank you to the audience member who highlighted that. Absolutely, I love the Everything ALS webinar series. In fact, I think I'm actually going to be a speaker for one of the upcoming events. We really love what they're doing and kind of how they're communicating science. And specifically, yes, Dr. Locatelli's episode. I'm sure people might be interested in it, and I believe all of those webinars are recorded on their YouTube. There's a good question about the mechanism. There's different drug targets, and obviously there's a lot of interest in targeting gene mutations or using gene therapies or gene modulation therapies like ASOs, antisense oligonucleotides, or CRISPR, etc. That's a good question. I mean, we definitely would love to see more of those. I do anticipate that we're going to see more of those antisense oligonucleotides, CRISPR methods, or even viral vectors. I think they're coming down the pipeline. It's more a matter of technology and delivery. And I think that once those sort of, technological advances continue to become more refined, they already are, very advanced. I mean, obviously, tofersen and antisense oligonucleotide was approved for SOD1 ALS, and I think we're going to see more of those. So there's a question about cocktails of drugs. So right now, and this varies a little bit by region because, as you know, not all medications are approved in every region. But in the US, there are 4 drugs that are currently approved for ALS, and they can be combined in the clinic. Again, tofersen is only approved for SOD1 ALS. So good question about drug targets. So regimens F and G, the question is, do they target TDP-43 in addition to the ISR? Well, yes, indirectly. So in a way, all these mechanisms are sort of combined or kind of linked, I should say. They addressing one part of the puzzle can also have downstream effects. And in fact, targeting the ISR, the hope is that it will also reduce the buildup of TDP-43, which we know is damaging. And so that will be kind of the mechanism by which these drugs hopefully work. So there's a question about the CNM AU8 trial or the Clean Nanomedicine trial. So I don't know the status of the planned phase 3. You're welcome to come back on March 14th because we'll speak about the CNM AU8, mostly in the context of the EAP, but I think you can feel free to ask the same question. Obviously, hopefully that will be open soon. So question, there's a question about the ADOR trial or edaravone trial. So this is something that, we've been discussing extensively over the last few weeks. For those of you who may not be familiar with this, so the ADOR trial was a trial of a formulation of oral edaravone that was done in Europe and was recently finished and announced, and the trial was negative. So, so the decision to either take or not take Radicava Ors, which is a different formulation of edaravone that's approved in the US, I would say that that really rests with the specific individual in consultation with their physician, and I will say that we just ask people who participate in the platform trial to make the decision before entering the platform trial, and that's true for all standard of care medications, because you may imagine that we're testing new medications on a certain background. In other words, we allow everyone to make their choices in terms of whether they want to take 1, 2, 3, or more medications. But then that decision should be made before entering the trial, because then we stratify by each medication or combination of medications. And what that means is that we ensure that the background medications do not confound the ultimate result of the trial. So the goal of the trial is to test if a new medication is effective. And we don't want differences in usage of Relivrio, Radicava, or other medications to confound the results. And so in order to do that, it's important that the decision to take or not take other medications is made before. Now, we understand that some people may, for a variety of reasons, stop medications in the middle of the trial. For example, somebody may have a side effect, and that's acceptable. But again, for the majority of the participants, we need the medications to be balanced to be able to, to be able to make conclusions for the trial. So question, again, follow-up question about the CNM-Au8 trial of clean nanomedicine. So again, we'll talk about that again on March 14th. And in the meantime, if you have any questions regarding the status, I would suggest that you contact Clean Nanomedicine directly. And I'm sure they have a website and an email for you to contact. If not, please let us know. So there's questions about other webinars, colleagues who have, given webinars, and so I would love to learn more, absolutely, from our colleagues. Dr. Rick Bedlak from Duke was here recently, actually, on this webinar, and perhaps we can invite him again to talk about additional therapies he may be pursuing. So questions about, other plans for other studies. I actually don't know. Obviously we have our industry partners join us as guest speakers at different points. And so if you have any questions about plans that our partners have, either Clean or Denali or Calico, I would recommend, reaching out to them directly by way of their website, or I'm sure they'll be back. We actually have, we are scheduling, guest speakers throughout the year. So, if you can look at the schedule that we announce every week or on our website, you'll be able to ask additional questions. I think we got all the questions. And Catherine, Allison, anything you've heard from the community this week you would like me to address?
I think all the questions in the chat are the same ones that I get via email. So I put my contact information in the chat box if anybody has follow-up questions after this webinar too.
Great. Thank you so much then, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.